Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Dani Marie AUC. This is part 2 of a collaboration I'm doing with the channel Unsightly Opinions. You can find part 1 below in the description and also linked in a card in the upper right hand corner. So today we're talking all about our experiences in university. We're hoping to show some of the variations that can happen between a student who goes to school in Canada versus one in the US, or someone who got a lot of really early interventions versus someone who may not have gotten as many, and even just two different people who happen to both have albinism. So, don't forget, show your support by liking, subscribing, and clicking that notification bell. Let's get into it.
Hi, I'm Tamara from Unsightly Opinions. I have a YouTube channel that talks all about albinism, blindness, what it's like to have a snoring guide dog on the mat behind you, fashion, and all things accessibility. So if you'd like to check that out, come see me on Unsightly Opinions, link down below.
What tools did you use in university?
University, at least in the courses I was in the sciences, needed a really wide range of adaptations. So I was very lucky in that I had access to everything that I needed, at least from an adaptive technology point of view. I had a screen reader, I had a computer, I had a braille printer or embosser, I had my guide dog, I had a braille display, I had all of the things necessary to help me move in a more equal playing field in a post-secondary environment.
So, university was really the point where I finally embraced all the tools that I could use. Mostly because I wanted to be more independent, but also because there were just more tools available to me. So, this is where I really started learning to use a white cane on my own. I have not had formal O&M training, but I did have the support services counselor, a wonderful woman. She showed me some basic techniques, and I started testing the waters with a white cane to see how I felt about it. I definitely didn't use it all the time. I still feel a little uncomfortable using it to this day just because I haven't had proper training, and it's a little intimidating for someone who went 18, 19 years without using one, now realizing that it would really benefit me. So here I am, still learning. I also used a handheld electronic magnifier to read. I had a Ruby first, and later I got the Eschenbach Smartlux. I have a review of that actually on my website that will be linked below. I also use a monocular. I mentioned in part 1 of this video that I did not have much luck with monoculars in elementary and middle and high school. But I finally found a monocular that works great for me, and I now own 2 of them, and I never go anywhere without one these days. It is so wonderful. I also take notes a mixture of ways, so depending on the class, I will take notes with a pen and paper, or I'll take notes with a laptop. I also used my smartphone for quite a lot when I was in university. I would use it to scan any charts and things that were drawn up on the board, or any handouts or anything like that, and I could scan it to a PDF and save it to the cloud. What do you tell professors?
Where I was, there was a department called the Specialized Support for Students with Disabilities, SSD or SSDS. And what they did is they would send, or they would create, a letter that I would have to deliver to the professors on the first day of class. And what that letter would have is the nature of your disability and that you'd be attending your class, and nothing more than that. Usually I would make an effort to deliver that within the first class or second class, and then I would make an appointment to see the professor during office hours within the first week. Because I needed to be clear to the professors that I was in the class, I was not going to be a problem, but if they wouldn't mind, if they could be more descriptive when they were talking about visual elements, or if they could read aloud the slides as they were presenting the information, that would be very helpful for me. Most were very accommodating to that.
So I generally tell professors that I have a visual impairment, that I'm legally blind, that I have tools that will help me keep up and to help me read the materials. And I will tell them generally the few accommodations that I need. And then I'll let them ask questions. I always waited until the end of the first class because during the first class I could see what their teaching style was like. I could see what the assignments would be like and what format, and I could see how many assignments there would be. So knowing this information would allow me to sort of figure out what accommodations I was going to need. So then when I did go to the professor after class, I could explain my visual impairment. I could tell them I have these tools to help me, but I may need help with this thing or that thing. Did your university have a disability office to help with accommodations?
My university did have a disability office, but it was, as many disability offices are, really underfunded and very overworked. So it was very difficult to get any needs met through that office.
So yes, I think most universities do in some form or another. The community college I went to first for 2 years actually had a wonderful support services office. The counselor was amazing and I loved her. She would definitely get me anything I needed and help me understand what kind of accommodations I could ask for and things like that. So generally I would tell professors on my own. I would tell them about my condition, I would tell them what I might need and things like that. But if I ever had any trouble with a professor, she could then come in, send them an email with the accommodations I need, why I need them, and make sure that I get them. Now, I was very lucky that I did not have any trouble with any professors throughout my university. But I have heard stories, horror stories of people who did, so keep that in mind, use that resource for sure. Now, when I left that community college and I went to a small branch of a larger state university, their support services office was pretty small, honestly. It was practically non-existent. I may have seen a person once or twice during my final 2 years of bachelor's degree and my master's degree. But I was lucky that I didn't need a ton of accommodations. So I could just go to professors and say, hey, if you're gonna do any handouts, could you enlarge them to this point font? Normally I ask for around 16 to 18 because that's a very doable font for me, and it doesn't mean that I'm gonna get a 50-page handout. So you've got to do what's best for you for sure though, and if you do have a good support services office, use it. What accommodations did you utilize?
The main accommodation that I used in university was around exams. I did take extra time to do my exams because they were in Braille, sometimes because I needed an interpreter or a transcriber. And the other ones were mainly I used a dog sitter when I was working in a lab setting where it wasn't safe to have my dog. And I did occasionally use a tutor for very image heavy or diagram heavy courses. I also used a note taker. So that would be a student volunteer, although that was very hit or miss whether that worked or not, depending on the course and how the person took notes.
So I didn't use a ton of accommodations. I generally would request things like PowerPoints or notes if they were going to be giving extensive notes on the board ahead of time so that I could follow along and mark them and things like that. It just speeds up the whole process because using monocular to read the board or to read a PowerPoint and go back and forth between that and making notes actually takes quite a lot of time, so it's quite a challenge. I generally didn't have to ask for extended time or private testing or anything like that because I didn't need those things. But those are very common accommodations to make sure you ask for if that's something you need. Did you work while attending university?
I worked my entire way through university. I worked part-time as a massage therapist. I worked part-time as a music teacher, and I would recommend, if you have any way to focus specifically on your education and not work, to do so. I needed to do that to help pay my rent and to help buy groceries, but it is very time intensive, so if you have the opportunity not to work, don't work.
I did work in community college. So in community college, I did a work-study job through financial aid in the support services office. I spent almost my entire 2 years working in that support services office. I honestly loved it. I got to work as a peer counselor, as a tutor, as an office manager doing various office tasks. I ran errands around campus and other things kind of like that. I got to meet people with all kinds of disabilities, including visual impairment, blindness, deafness, mobility disabilities, ADHD, dyslexia, and seizure disorders, and just all kinds of other disabilities. And it really helped me to understand what the world was like for other people with disabilities. It helped me to sort of expand my scope of thinking in that kind of area. And it was really good for me, I think. I also spent a semester working in the surgical technology program. So there I graded papers and cleaned up, organized things, and just did some basic errands and things like that. What did you find most challenging relating to vision during your time at university?
I found that most teachers had never dealt with a visually impaired or blind student before. There were a lot of misconceptions about what was necessary, even in the SSD office, or the Disability Supports Office. And it was difficult to communicate those needs when people had these assumptions about you and what you were and were not capable of. I was turned down for courses because teachers believed that I could not do the course material or would not be able to complete the hands-on component. I had to advocate my whole way through because it felt like every time I'd take a step forward, there were these stumbling blocks that I'd run into. I wouldn't get materials on time or have textbooks in a format that I could use. I wouldn't be able to access the material at the same speed or at the same time as my peers, which definitely put me on the back foot.
My biggest challenge was eye strain. Education requires a lot of reading. I mean, who's surprised? I'm not surprised. But between my poor visual acuity, my photophobia, my nystagmus, all of that can be really tiring on my eyes. So I went from reading print books to myself. I went from reading print books to reading print books with a handheld magnifier, to ebooks with TTS, which is text-to-speech, and even some audiobooks. The text-to-speech and audiobooks really saved me, honestly. That's what really helped me get through, especially some of my more content-heavy classes. Like there was a history class I took, and we had a ton of reading in that class. I loved that class, but it was a lot. It was a lot to read, and it was a strain on my eyes for sure. Do you feel you were given as equal an opportunity to succeed as your sighted peers?
Well, I think it's possible to narrow the gap between whether you have the same opportunities as your peers. It is not possible to eliminate the deficits or the problems that you run into. Even with extra time, even with accommodations that I was given, even with all of the adaptive equipment, there was still a lot of information that was a lot more time consuming to get, that it took me longer to actually receive from an adaptive point of view, and for me to understand because it was so visually dependent.
I do. As far as my education was concerned, I had the accommodations I needed, and I felt comfortable in that if I needed to ask for more accommodations, I could, and I would have been given those accommodations. I had help from vocational rehab. I just had really good professors. I was just very lucky in that. Now, when it came to my clinical education and my master's degree in counseling, I struggled to get the supervision and the training that really would have benefited me. And that's something I could do a whole video on, and I may one day, but not today. What did you love most about university?
I think the thing I really loved most about university was how much of a community it was. You were with a group of people that felt the same way about learning that you did, and you were able to find people with similar interests to yours. I was able to make friends in every course just by saying hi to whoever I was sitting next to, and I really appreciated that experience of thinking critically and learning to analyze material and truly learning how to learn and be an adult.
I am a naturally curious person, so I love everything about education. I love my classes, I love the reading, I love getting to know new kinds of people, I love getting to know the professors. I loved everything about that. I really don't think there was one class that I disliked, honestly. I also loved the close relationships I formed with a few people. Going through something like the struggle of getting a degree, especially with a master's degree, really can bond you to certain people, and I feel like I made a couple lifelong friends in that program especially. So that means a lot. Did you deal with discrimination at university?
I dealt with discrimination almost daily. I chose a field that was not suited for somebody of my needs. When I first attended the orientation with the disability services, I was told that I should select a nice arts option, that it would be far too difficult for me to do any kind of a science type curriculum. I am not the kind of person that stands down easily, so I decided to move forward with my science-based education. I decided to do all of the lab courses, and in many, many ways I had to fight tooth and nail for every single course that I took because I was not on an equal playing field, and the office had not had any experience with students going through the program the way I had.
I did not deal with discrimination that I know of in my education. I mean, I had a pretty good experience as far as it went with classes, getting accommodations and things like that. No one really gave me a hard time about the things I needed, and that was really nice. Again, I mentioned my clinical studies. There was definitely some incidents of discrimination there, but like I said, I'm not going to get into that in this video. Maybe in a future video. What is your advice for college students now?
My advice to any new college students would be make friends with whoever you sit next to. They're going to be an invaluable resource. Even if you're not friends, they can probably help you out and whisper in your ear every 5 seconds, oh, they've changed to the next slide, or there's a picture of a cat on the slide. Give you little bits of information that you wouldn't have otherwise. I would also say try and find ways to do things independently, because at least for me and for most of the people that I know, it was very difficult to access textbooks on time, especially if you needed them in an alternate format, like digital or Braille. I was often waiting months and months and months for that, so I had to learn how to scan my own textbooks just so I could keep up with the course material. So try and put those skills in place. Practice those things in high school while you still have time. Use digital recorders and do anything that you have to. Advocate for yourself. Don't take no for an answer. You are allowed to take courses that are not blind appropriate. You are allowed to try things that are a little bit outside of the norm. So don't let people tell you no.
My advice is to take some time to enjoy the experience. Enjoy the education, enjoy the people, enjoy the environment, because I know it's so easy to get caught up in the struggle and to just overlook the good things because you have a million things to do. Some of you might be working while you're in school full time with kids and families, and I can understand it's a huge struggle, but take some time to enjoy the little things, the people you've met, time to appreciate the new things you've learned, and just take some time to see the small things. And also, if you haven't found what works for you and you're struggling, keep looking, because there are so many things out there that you're bound to find some combination of tools, tips, and tricks that will work for you. There is a magical combination out there for everybody. I can promise you that. I want to say a huge thank you to Unsightly Opinions and her channel for doing this collab with me. I mean, it's been an experience. This is the first collaboration on my channel, and I was really excited about doing it for you guys, and I hope it's been helpful. I hope it's been somewhat entertaining, maybe educational. And if you haven't watched part 1 of this video, it will be linked in the description below and in this card in the upper right hand corner. Go check it out. Go check out her channel, go subscribe. And before you leave my channel, like, subscribe, click that notification bell so you can catch any of my new videos. As always, stay curious. And until next time, bye.